George Groves wins a landslide 12-round decision over Christopher Rebrasse to capture the European super middleweight title and become the mandatory challenger for Anthony Dirrell's WBC world title in the process. Now, normally what happens when a fighter is coming back from their first devastating knockout defeat, they're normally gun shy. They're normally questioning themselves. They're normally very tentative, afraid to exchange with their opponent, even if their opponent is not necessarily a big puncher like Christopher Rebrasse. But with George Groves, we got the exact opposite. George Groves was far from being tentative. He was even more gung-ho than usual. And in fact, George Groves ended up throwing nearly 1,000 punches in this fight. As far as I'm aware, he has never thrown that many punches in a 12-round fight before. But it has to be said, his accuracy, his connect percentage was pretty bad. Nearly 1,000 punches thrown, and he only connected on about 17%. Right, 17% of those punches, so not a good connect percentage. Now, the first thing that struck me about Groves in this fight is that it was noticeable that he's changed his style. I don't know if this is going to be a long-term thing or this was just a style that him and Paddy Fitzpatrick worked on for this particular fight, but he had definitely changed his style in this fight. George Groves normally comes out with the David Haye style, a wide foot stance, feinting a lot with the left hand, getting his opponent to lead off and then trying to beat them to the punch or counter. A sharpshooter style, basically, an ambush style, as some people would call it. All that was out the window in this fight. George Groves boxed in a much more conventional fashion. He had his hands up, something, again, you don't normally see from George Groves. Normally, he's got his left hand down and he's feinting with it. Perhaps Paddy Fitzpatrick didn't want that in this fight because maybe he was anxious that Groves might get caught again the way he got caught against Carl Froch. So he had both his hands up. He was coming forward. He was throwing a double jab. He was throwing body shots. And it was a much more conventional textbook boxing style than we're used to seeing from George Groves. All the feints and arms down and moving around the ring and trying to draw the lead, that was all gone. And it was conventional, very conventional boxing. But it was sloppy because he was throwing a lot of punches, missing a hell of a lot of punches, wasting a lot of punches, not really setting his power punches up. It's like he came out in the first few rounds just trying to overpower Rebrasse, but it looked like he was forcing it. Nothing was flowing for George Groves. It was all very, very forced. Now, one thing I will say is that over the course of 12 rounds, I was surprised how well George Groves' stamina held up. I think he must have trained like an absolute demon for this fight. In fact, after the Carl Froch loss, I'm pretty sure that he must have been in the gym straight away because I think his stamina probably has improved. Although it has to be said that Rebrasse was extremely limited. There were moments in this fight where George Groves did look winded. He did look tired. But Rebrasse was so slow in terms of his hand speed and his foot speed, and he was so one-paced that he wasn't able to capitalize on those moments when George Groves was tired after he threw a combination or wanted to hold on. Rebrasse wasn't able to capitalize on any of that. He just let George Groves off the hook all the time. A very one-paced fighter. Not a big puncher, but you don't necessarily have to be a big puncher if a guy is completely gassed out. Just put your punches together, land a few, and you can still hurt a guy, especially a guy who's coming off a knockout defeat. But Rebrasse was very poor, even for a European level fighter. Very, very limited. Very, very limited. And George Groves was able to get away with a lot of things in this fight that he won't get away with at a higher level. Now, a lot of people are saying Groves didn't look as sharp as he normally does, has his power diminished. I don't think his power is diminished, and I don't think he was any less sharp than he normally is. I just think it was the change in style that made it look that way. If George Groves, I think, had fought in his conventional style, his normal style, the style that Adam Booth taught him, if he'd fought in that style against Rebrasse, I think he would have had more success in terms of landing big power shots. Because Rebrasse is so slow. He's not a guy that's going to put loads and loads of pressure on you. You know, he's just not that kind of fighter. So if Groves had kept a wide foot base, kept that left hand down, and tried to draw a lead from Rebrasse, get him to overextend, because when you got that wide foot base, your head is, you know, much further away from your opponent than when your feet are more together, like George Groves' feet were in this fight. So your opponent, you know, oftentimes has to reach a lot more if you've got a wide foot base to be able to get to you. So I think that style would have worked better in this fight for George Groves, you know, for this particular fight, because he could have made Rebrasse, who's a slow-handed guy, overextend himself, and that would have created much more gaps, I think. And also, he would have been able to catch Rebrasse off guard. He would have been able to set traps for him fighting in that type of style. Whereas this style that he fought in this fight was a lot more deliberate. It was a lot more obvious what he was doing. His punches were a lot more telegraphed. He didn't have that suddenness. He didn't have that element of surprise, that David Haye style that Adam Booth taught him, where he's moving around, not really throwing many punches, feinting a lot, getting his opponent to commit, and then bang, coming in with a quick 1-2. I think that style would have worked better against Rebrasse. This style wasted a hell of a lot of energy and all that kind of stuff. I think he can, if he wants to, go back to the old style. It's just whether Paddy Fitzpatrick will want him to do that. It's not just about George Groves having confidence in his chin. It's also about his trainer having confidence in his chin, or lacking confidence in his chin. So you have to look at that as well. But also, I think another thing that kind of hampered George Groves' performance a little bit, I don't want to be too down on him because he's coming back from a knockout defeat. I was extremely impressed by his confidence. Extremely impressed. He even called Carl Froch out after the fight. So George Groves is very mentally strong, obviously. Obviously, he's blessed with terrific mental strength to be able to come back this quickly at this type of level against an opponent who, yeah, wasn't a big puncher, was very limited. But even so, to look as confident as he does, that's a rare thing for a fighter to have. If you look at Lennox Lewis when he lost to Oliver McCall, he didn't come back with anywhere near the kind of confidence that George Groves has come back with. So you have to commend Groves on his confidence. You have to commend him on the fact that he was able to throw that many punches in a fight. But at the same time, he was reckless. And I think rather than crumbling because of the defeat, I think the defeat made him angry, George Groves. I think it motivated him, made him angry. And I think he came into the fight with a little bit too much to prove, a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, hoping to get a spectacular KO victory and erase the memory of what happened to him in the Froch fight. So I think he was trying too hard, and the style that he was fighting in, those two things combined really caused him to not perform to the best of his ability, in my opinion. But nonetheless, he has won the European title for what it's worth, and he's now mandatory challenger for Anthony Dirrell's WBC world title. Anthony Dirrell apparently has a voluntary defense first, and then after the voluntary defense, he'll be mandated to fight George Groves, assuming he gets past that voluntary defense. It'd be interesting to see who that's going to be against. But drop your comments below, man. How do you think George Groves will do against Anthony Dirrell? Do you think that he's going to go back to the Adam Booth style? Or do you think the Paddy Fitzpatrick style is going to be like this for the duration of the time that George Groves is training with Paddy Fitzpatrick? Is it going to be this hands-up style, coming forward, throwing a hell of a load of punches? Or are they going to switch it up and use movement and the hands-down style and all that, feinting and all that kind of stuff? Are they still going to use that for some fights? Let me know in the comment section below. How do you think Groves would do? And yeah, just let me know, let me know your opinion, because as far as I'm concerned, on that performance, Dirrell would beat Groves, in my opinion. I think I can't see Groves beating Dirrell if he fights like that, wasting all them punches. Dirrell, not a spectacular fighter, but he can punch, and he's economical, and he's pretty accurate. He's calm under pressure. Again, credit to Rebrasse, actually, because he was very calm under pressure. One of the good things I can say about Rebrasse is he's a tough guy, calm under pressure, fairly good defense when you take into consideration the amount of punches that are being thrown at him. But yeah, so as far as Dirrell goes, he's calm under pressure. He also has a pretty good defense. But unlike Rebrasse, he can punch. And he's far more accurate, and he can turn the heat up when needed. He's not as one-paced as Rebrasse is. So yeah, I'll be interested to hear you guys' opinions on this. George Groves' change of style, whether he'll adapt to do different things against someone like Dirrell. I don't know. Let me know how you feel in the comment section below. This is Hatman, I'm out.